Okay, so the forum is starting, and good evening and welcome, everybody, to the People for Effective Government online event. We're glad to have you here. My name is Chris Venn, a PEG board member. Mark Kinney, another PEG board member, will join me as co-moderator. PEG is a nonprofit, Spokane-based, nonpartisan coalition. Our mission is to support bipartisan approaches to governing, which are fiscally responsible, ensure an adequate social safety net, and promote a civil society. We've been holding in-person forums and online events for over 3 years. For those who are new to our events, we look forward to having you with us in the future. We're committed to changing the current political climate in which our two major parties have become increasingly polarized. We're working to encourage sincere and civil debate about the challenges that our community and our nation faces and about effective solutions to those challenges by providing speakers with information and perspectives on a variety of relevant topics. We're a small grassroots organization working with very shallow pockets. If you're finding these events helpful, as you think about issues at the local, state, and federal level, please consider joining as a member or making a donation to PEG. We're a nonprofit relying on membership dues and donations to cover our costs. If you're interested in learning more about PEG and possibly becoming a member, please visit our website at www.pegnow.org. During tonight's presentation, audience members are welcome to submit questions at any time. Use the Q&A function. Our speakers will answer as many questions as possible before we end the forum at around 8:30 p.m. Please be brief. You can ask several questions, but please submit only one question at a time, again, using that Q&A feature. This event is being recorded and will post on our website within a couple of weeks. The Office of County Clerk is an important but little-known part of Spokane County government. Current office holder Tim Fitzgerald will explain the role of county clerk. He'll also discuss the County Veterans Court, a relatively new judicial program with a strong track record of success. Colonel Timothy W. Fitzgerald, United States Marine Corps retired, was commissioned as a second lieutenant in May 1983 after graduating with distinction from Virginia Military Institute with a BA in history. Upon completing the basic school, he reported for flight training at Naval Air Station, Pensacola, Florida, and was designated a naval aviator in May 1985. Throughout his 30.5 years of service in the Marines, he held multiple command positions, ranging from platoon commander and air mission commander to squadron commanding officer and task force commander. He had several squadron staff positions, including instructor evaluation pilot, operations officer, aircraft maintenance officer, and executive officer. He was designated a presidential command pilot while assigned to Marine Helicopter Squadron 1, the presidential helicopter squadron. Colonel Fitzgerald served 4 combat tours in the Persian Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan. In April 2014, he was appointed the county clerk and clerk of the Superior Court for Spokane County. He was elected in November 2014 to a 4-year term and re-elected in November 2018. He currently serves on 19 committees and boards, including the Spokane Regional Law and Justice Council and the Board of Directors for Spokane County United Way. He is on the Board of Directors for the Spokane Regional Veterans Treatment Court Forum and previous president of the Washington State Association of County Clerks for 2 years. He was Washington State County Clerk of the Year for 2017 and 2022. Okay, so having introduced our speaker, we'll start with his initial presentation, and we'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So Tim, it's over to you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. And Chris, if you want to throw up the briefing.
I will do that.
And a special thank you to Chris and Mark for allowing me this opportunity. This is, I think it's great that the public gets a chance to hear what their elected officials are doing and in the offices that we are running. Tonight, what I'd like to do is we're going to discuss your second busiest office in county government, the office that runs your day-to-day legal system, and that is the county clerk's office. So what we'll do is if you could hold all questions until the end, I'll take about 20 minutes to talk about the clerk's office, and then we'll go into the Veterans Court and the Veterans Therapeutic Court and talk about that. My wife will join me in that one. She's a staff member. We'll do about 15, 16 minutes about that, and then we'll leave the remaining of the time for questions. And I look forward to what everybody has to say. All right, Mark, if you could, or Chris, if you could do the next slide for me. Okay, so the county clerk is one of your elected officials. You have 6 elected officials in the executive branch: assessor, auditor, clerk, treasurer, prosecutor, and sheriff. And in some counties, you have an elected coroner that makes 7 in the executive branch. The clerk is in the Constitution. So I'm actually a constitutional officer, and I am also a statutory officer. So I have constitutional authority because I'm in Article 4, Section 26 of the state constitution. And then I'm also in many RCWs with statute. My main job is to run your day-to-day legal system and to manage all the records of the county for the legal system and all the financial transactions. That includes juvenile court, that includes civil commitment. So I am the keeper of the county legal record. Another way to look at it is that I'm the administrative and the financial officer of Superior Court. Now, why is that? Well, it's checks and balances. And more importantly, you have the executive branch executing judicial orders. So when a court makes a decision that deals with money, family, property, whatever the case may be, it comes to me to execute on behalf of the court and on behalf of the public. That's important for confidence and trust with the public in their judicial system, because it avoids a perception or the concept of undue bias that the court makes a decision and then everything goes into the court to handle. This way, I'm handling it on behalf of the court, and that's really important for our public trust. Now, I do have some exhibits for you. So we talk about all the RCWs and rules. Most things are electronic, but I wanted to bring you some stuff. This right here, look at the size of this. These are the RCWs that cover a vast amount of the duties that I do as your county clerk and the legal system. In addition to that, you also have what's called GRs and CRs, general rules and court rules. And all of those are put in a volume like this, another big volume. And the attorneys have to know about all this stuff too. So these are all the local or general rules and court rules statewide. And then you also get local rules that pertain to just your court. So our own Superior Court will create local court rules for managing our court here in Spokane County. All right, Chris, next slide, please. So my duties, in addition to running my offices, are I provide support for your 12 Superior Court judges, and then they have 8 court commissioners. You cannot have a court hearing unless you have a court clerk in that hearing. So judicial branch runs their courtrooms. They're making the judicial decisions, but in that courtroom, on behalf of the public, an executive branch member, one of my clerks is in there. We are taking all the minutes. We are documenting all the exhibits. We handle all the documentation and paperwork. So nothing goes into the court at all. Attorneys will come in, attorneys will present their cases, pass all information to my clerk. We'll pass it to the judge, take a look at it. If he has any questions, and they'll pass it back to the clerk. So all original documents, everything that's original in the court that comes in and out of the court will stay with me. The other thing I do is I provide services for our law and justice community and to the general public. We'll talk more about that. All right, Chris, next slide. We do about 20 dockets. So a docket is a type of hearing that happens. So all 20 of our judicial officers at the Superior Court level are active in courtrooms every day. So the public there's a lot of stuff going on in the courthouse. When we get further down the brief, I'll talk to you about some of the complex dynamics that go on. So in my office right here, I have a total of 7 divisions. I have an archives division. They maintain and keep all of our legal records. And I have records all the way back to 1878, and we have digitized all those records, but we still have paper records right now because we haven't fully transitioned to purely electronic or digitized copies right now. In addition, it's options for the public. Many folks in the public don't have access to electronic or computers, and you have to come in and do things by paper. And access to justice is one of the most fundamental things that I ensure and protect in the courthouse so that everybody can get in and get themselves in front of the court. I have a juvenile division. Juvenile division is a mini courthouse for me. So we have a juvenile court that handles all juvenile matters, truancy, youth at risk, CHINs, and then CHINs is a children in needs. And then I have a section that's in that court that does my clerk duties on behalf of the public. So I'll have processors and courtroom clerks that will go in there and clerk the hearings. I have electronics record division. So as most of you know, about a year and a half ago, we established electronic filing in Spokane. That's a big deal. And we're getting a lot of our documents electronically now, and we hope to continue that process. So I have an entire division. They enter all the electronic data. They enter all data paper to scan it and put it into the system, and then we digitize it. So that team, there's 12 processors, and then they have a protection orders team. One of the great things Spokane did was about 3 years ago, looking at the importance, the volume, and the amount of protection orders, we created a protection orders team. And what this team does is that after a person leaves the court and has a court decision for a protection order, this team builds the case, enters everything in electronically, ensures that electronically it is sent to police records. And then they go outside and they brief the petitioner, the survivor, on their rights, their obligations, and their responsibilities. Because when you're coming in and do a protection order, you're already in a very traumatized situation. And we do everything we can to let you know what you have to do, what you need to do, and here's your documentation. The criticality of getting it to police records electronically is so important. In the old days, that didn't happen. Paper was carried down to police records 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The person left the courthouse at 10 in the morning under a protection order, but the police did not have it yet. And so we modernized all this to ensure police records would have it. Police records takes everything that we enter, we send it all to them electronically, they enter it, and they can send it out to a squad car. So when a police officer arrives on a domestic violence situation or an anti-harassment situation, they can go into their squad car computer and see exactly what the court has ordered, who stays, who goes, are there weapons, is there a history of violence? And so that's really important. So it protects our police officers in addition to protecting our communities. So that's what our protection orders team does there. I have an administrative manager. Her job is basically what a chief deputy would do, but I've created a flat staff. I don't have a pyramid staff. I do not have supervisors supervising supervisors. That's not good for taxpayers to pay all that extra funding for supervisors watching supervisors. So everybody, my staff, my supervisors and managers report directly to me, but my administrative manager helps me with the budget, personnel, supplies, and she helps me run the day-to-day office functions. I have a customer service section, obviously to deal with customer service. We get about 377 folks that come into the office every day with documentation. We have 3 stations for customer service. We also, very old-fashioned and traditionally, we man a phone line. So we have a receptionist on a phone line. So when people call in, they can hear a live voice talking to them about what their issue is. We also have a website, an email where you can send in information on the email and have an email person sitting there that will answer you back on the email. Obviously, we get tons of mail. So we have a mail clerk that helps us handle all our mail. Then the court services division manager, she has all 20 of my courtroom clerks plus a lead clerk. So again, as I talked about earlier, when the court is in session and there's a judicial officer on the bench, there has to be a clerk in that courtroom taking the minutes and the notes. So they have 20 that run every day. I have 20 clerks that cover it every day. Not much wiggle room, very little flexibility if folks are getting sick or on vacation. And then finally, I have a finance division manager that handles all the finances that come in. And we'll talk a bit more about finances. Okay, so a total of 63 personnel. So I'm about 11 in size in the county as an office. All right, Chris, next slide, please.
unmute. Huh.
So the slides are not moving?
Yeah, not, well, I'll figure it out.
Okay, no problems. So as we're moving on down, the clerk's office resides in the executive branch. So I call these fun facts. These are things that are neat, that would be great to know. Currently, I have 88,500 paper legal records still on the shelves, but I have digitized all of our legal records that we have, again, back to 1878. Once we digitize a record, we do quality assurance. We have staff review the digitized record, electronic record, and the paper record to make sure that the electronic record is readable, it has the proper information, and it's an exact actual duplicate of the paper file. And when that is done, I sign off the form and I told the court I'm going to destroy these files. And the court says, yep, destroy those paper files. So we're saving money with storage space. We're saving money by getting all this stuff out of these extra storage rooms. And we've basically destroyed 150,500 paper records. We do have tens of thousands of exhibits. I got to keep exhibits on hand, especially murder trials, rape trials, anything that's a serious offense, because defendants have a right to appeal, and they may appeal in Court of Appeals. They may go up to the Supreme Court. So we have to maintain this information in case there's an appeal requirement. My finance department I was talking to you about earlier, if you can imagine this, 1.4 million, they handle $1.4 million with credit cards or debit cards or cash, in some cases check. And they do that with court costs, fines, or fees, or people paying to introduce documents into the court system. And they do about 8,438 financial transactions a month. So you can see the volume that's going on in the office, 377, customers coming in, $1.4 million in financial transactions. And that adds up, that 377, that adds up 10,500 customers per month. So that's why I'm the second busiest office in county government, but it's really important. These are fundamental rights. Your legal system is fundamental. I talk to the high school kids all the time, and one of the classes I give them is that the Bill of Rights, your first 10 amendments. In that first 10 amendments, 50% of the Bill of Rights deals solely with your legal rights. And that's amendments 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's how important our legal system is, and it must be kept sacred. Okay, next slide, Chris. All right, so those processors, those data input folks I was talking to you about earlier, they handle 41,000 legal documents per month. Now, a legal document can be 1 page, it could be up to 21 pages. So the volume is substantial as stuff is coming. That's why this electronic process that we're instituting is the direction we really need to go to keep up with what's going on. Our Superior Court does about 2,000 new cases per month in all 8 case types. We'll talk a little more about the 8 case types here in a few moments. I summon 31,000 jurors a year, and we do it with one single jury office in Superior Court, court admin, that handles both Superior Court, District Court, and Municipal Court. So you have a 12-person jury. We'll look at 14 people in case someone gets sick. It takes probably, from what I see every now and then, it would take probably up to 120 people to get 14 jurors. And then 5,000 of those jurors will actually go through the entire process and end up sitting on a jury trial. And our Superior Court will do about 100 jury trials a month. That's 2019 numbers, because obviously COVID changed all that, and we weren't doing jury trials at all because we weren't allowed. Okay, next slide. So what I'm trying to show you is you can just see the volume that's going on in your legal system. It's pretty substantial. These are the 8 case types. Criminal cases, those are your felonies. Grand theft auto, murder, assault 1, rape. Civil cases are your protection orders, anti-harassment, domestic violence, vulnerable adult, stalking. You would have extreme risk protection orders in there also. So there's 6 of the protection orders in civil. Now, criminal cases do have one protection order. It's called a no contact order. And then down to domestic cases, which is family law. That's your divorces, your parenting plan, your child schedules, and things along those lines. They can also have a protection order. That's called a restraining order. A person's restrained from doing certain things. Then you have guardianship and probate cases. So if people, when folks pass on, there's a lot of probate legal matters that go on. And we do file wills when people bring wills into the office. Then we have adoption and paternity cases. So establishing paternity on who the father is, and of course, adoption cases. And then we have civil commitment, and that's mental illness cases. That is voluntary and involuntary commitment. So it's pretty serious business. Mental health, it's a confidential case type, as are adoption and paternities. Mental health, case type 6s are our fastest growing case type, which is probably not something to be happy about. Then, of course, we have dependencies, at-risk youth truancy. Those are all in the juvenile court. And then the juvenile offender. Folks under 18 that commit offenses, we do that. We handle them in juveniles. So these are your 8 case types that your Superior Court will be handling. My largest case load, number of cases, is currently civil cases. So medical malpractice, unlawful detainer evictions, things along those lines. My largest volume of paperwork, obviously, is family law. So just a heads up on that. No one is coming into my office having a good day, unfortunately, unless they're adopting, which is great. They're just wonderful days. And on occasion, we'll have a divorced couple coming in. They're content. They're having an amicable divorce and they just want to move on in their lives. All right, Chris, next slide. So here's kind of an idea how to look at my office. So the public and the attorneys are at the top of that hourglass. The bottom of that hourglass is the courts. That skinny part in the middle, that's my office. And you just keep flipping that glass over and over every day. Everything runs back and forth in my office. And so when my team is on their game, the system is functioning great. But if I'm having a bad day, I bottleneck and slow the system down. That's one of the important things. That can cause delays. So that's one of the important things we pay a great deal of attention to make sure we're doing our part in the system to keep the system flowing, because we run the day-to-day legal system, as I mentioned earlier. All right, Chris, next slide, please. So here's some interaction, and this is what I was talking about earlier. This slide surprises a lot of people. A lot of folks have no idea all these agencies and organizations have to work together to make our legal system work. Now, our legal system is a very good system, but it is slow sometimes, it is complex, it is comprehensive, and it's very intimidating for people that don't understand what's going on. So in the clerk's office, my job is to finances the paperwork and running the system. Then you have a Superior Court administrator. Ours is Ashley Cowan. She's a wonderful, wonderful administrator, one of the best in the state. We are so lucky to have her. And her job is to run the administrative matters inside the court, the Superior Court, the 12 judges and the 8 court commissioners. Your 12 judges will each have a judicial assistant. That assistant helps them scheduling, documentation, talks to the attorneys about what's going on and what the court is doing. And then they also have court reporters, very valuable. Although my staff is in there taking minutes, we do have a court reporter in each of our 12 Superior Court judge courtrooms that actually do the actual, verbatim every word that's said. We have a juvenile court, and we have a juvenile court administrator, Tori Peterson. She's wonderful, does a great job. She handles all the case type 7s and case type 8s, all the juvenile matters. We have a prosecuting attorney's office. They're mainly focusing on the criminal side of the house, but they do some family law matters and some other matters that are assigned to them. On the opposition there, we have our public defender's office, and then we have a counsel for defense. Counsel for defense will step in and defend a defendant if there's a conflict of interest with the public defender, and the public defender can't defend somebody. Public defender or counsel for defense, those are constitutional rights. You have a constitutional right to an attorney if you go before the court. So these are important offices to have. Of course, we have Department of Corrections, and then we have Detention Services. Department of Corrections will handle your correctional facilities, the 12 correctional facilities and a penitentiary in the state, like Airway Heights or Walla Walla. Detention Services runs the jail, and that's the local county jail. A person cannot be incarcerated in their past 1 year or 365 days. We have pretrial services. What pretrial services does is that when a defendant's coming in, they will get information, and we will look at what's going on. What's their criminal history? What's their background? What's What's the offense? Can we use a diversion court? Can we divert them to something different? And that's what pretrial services will do to help us move folks along and not send everybody to the jail, obviously. And then an important aspect that people forget about is our bar association, our Spokane County Bar Association, about 1,700 attorneys. And of course, the attorneys are in there in all the courtrooms, either prosecuting or defending their clients in case types 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on down the line. Case type 7 dependencies we talked about earlier, normally handled by the Attorney General's office. So we have an Attorney General's office here that handles those case types via our juvenile court. So you can see all these different agencies are coming together and doing the best they can to make sure our legal system is fair, it's just, and that it's operating. And of course, they all have different statutes and different mandates and different requirements. So it gets interesting sometimes. All right, Chris, next slide. Most folks, when they come into my office, why are you coming to the clerk's office? Well, you're going to file a new case, or you're checking existing documents. You want to conform a document that you have already submitted. You want to get the stamp on it. You want to check out a file and take a look at it. Anybody can come in and ask for a file and look at it, provided it's public record. If it's a confidential case, you can't see it, but public records you can see. Obviously, you can't see sealed cases at all. Nobody sees sealed cases. They can ask for copies for documents. They would ask a copy out of their file. Hey, I got divorced so many years ago. I'd like to get the decree of dissolution because I'm doing something different. I'm selling a home or house and I can't find my original. And we can make them copies. We also do letters of guardianship, letters of testamentary. We issue writs. There's a lot going on. And folks just ask, hey, I've been told to come to court, say I have a hearing. Where am I going? And we're there to help them out. We can look it up, see what courtroom to go into, what time it starts, and get them there in a timely manner. And unfortunately, a lot of folks get to run around as accidental. They go to district court by mistake when they should be in superior court, or vice versa, or they go to the wrong office. What we go do when they finally get to me and their hearing started 45 minutes ago, I will walk them down to the courthouse and I'll just give the judge a quick note and say, hey, Your Honor, they came to my office. They've been here. They just came to the wrong place. And then the court will usually entertain them and not, sanction or anything like that. All right, next slide, Chris. This slide here I have, it mainly deals with the attorneys and me working with the attorneys, and it just kind of goes through all the various things that we will do when we're working a new case. I get an opportunity to talk to the brand new attorneys. At Gonzaga, we have the law school, and then when they get done with their training, I get to have a class with them, and I talk all about the clerk's office. And I told them, hey, I'll be honest with you, your best friend in the courthouse is the clerk's office. It's not the court. Your best friend is the clerk's office. All right, next slide. So some issues and updates that you might be interested in. Post-COVID challenges. What are our challenges? Well, the pandemic really set us back, as everybody knows. We are running about 3 years behind in jury trials, and we're doing it with the best we can to get this jury trial backlog caught up. Talking to the attorneys, seeing if they can settle before it goes to trial. Courts, we have 6 judges that do nothing but trials, if that's the case. That's why you saw that large number of 35,000 jurors that we're summoning back in now. We do all our jury trials in the courthouse, in the courtroom. So we're trying to move along this backlog and get it done. But some good things about COVID is that we did a lot of innovations. We do remote hearings now. For the civil commitment, we used to travel to 15 different sites, 15 different, the Inland Northwest Behavioral Health and Frontier Health and Eastern Washington State Hospital, or Providence or Sacred Heart. We would go to these different hospitals for these hearings on civil commitment, but now we do it remotely. We have 2 hearing rooms that the clerks are in, and then the court is in their hearing room, and then we have the folks, the defendants coming in. They are on Zoom. Everything's done by Zoom, and it's done by remote. So we're not traveling all around the place, all around the county anymore, which is good. So there's some good things that came out of what we had with the pandemic. A very important note that you need to know is that the court and the clerk never closed their doors during the pandemic. We were one of the 5 departments or so that stayed open the entire time during COVID-19. Again, access to justice, fundamental constitutional rights. actions speak louder than words. We had our doors open and people could still come and do their business in the court. The hours may have changed a bit, but they still had access to the court and they still had access to the clerk as an essential office. So that's what we're doing with COVID right now. We're still under, obviously the governor's proclamation, his orders ended on 31 October. But the Chief Justice and the Supreme Court emergency order is still in place. And we need that order in place so that we're able to meet these flexible timelines in our judicial system. If that order is not in place, we go back to the very rigid timelines of speedy trial and stuff. And we obviously can't meet those because we have a backlog. Civil protection orders, they came up with a brand new law that went into effect on 1 July of this year. A lot of the civil protection orders are a single petition now, and you have 5 of the 6 parts of civil protection order in the single petition. Supposed to make it easier for folks to fill out the petition. Petitions cannot be denied when they're sent in electronically, even if they have mistakes in them. Language access is very important. So these are all things that this new legislation came down. Spokane County is ahead of the game. We have instituted all these requirements that were asked of us to do legislatively. So, and our civil protection orders program is a model for the state. And it's a good thing because, again, you don't want folks leaving the courthouse not protected, and you don't want officers arriving on the scene where there's not, they don't know what's going on. So, but there's a lot happening in the civil protection world, and the language access is the next thing we have to work on, next big thing we have to accomplish. Electronic filing, I've implemented electronic filing. Of the 41,000 documents that came in on average a month, 7,600 are done electronically right now. We're at 21% of all documents are electronically filed. I joked around with my friends at Kane County and Snohomish who are fully electronic too. There's only 6 counties in the state that are fully electronic filing. We're one of them. And I joked around with them and said, hey, so what did you use? About 68% before you had to make it mandatory for e-filing? They all started laughing at me. They said, you kidding me? Not 68%, about 23%. And that's where it stopped. Then we had to make it mandatory for all the attorneys to do e-filing. So we're getting close to that position right now. And I'm working with the Bar Association so that when we transition to a mandatory requirement, there are no surprises and the system is working. Some of you are probably familiar with our eviction defense program that we put in place during COVID. It was a very effective program. People were saying that when that proclamation ended, there would be thousands of people evicted. That never happened in Spokane. We dispute resolution process set up. We had right to counsel set up. So when the landlord had to finally get in a situation where they're looking to evict somebody, they had to inform the tenant that they have a right to counsel and that they had to go do mediation, their dispute resolution center first. And then the dispute resolution center had to send me a document telling me, yeah, Tim, they mediated, it worked, or they mediated and it didn't work. And if it didn't work, then I would accept the unlawful detainer eviction paperwork and move it to the court, and then the court would handle it after that. But the idea was not to have a bunch of people evicted and not to have the courts inundated with a bunch of unlawful detainers. So our program worked out fairly well. At least that's what we think. Legal financial obligations, always a sensitive subject. Folks have to pay. The court has ordered them to pay. We've been working with our defendants on programs like a reconciliation day where they can come in and we can look through their files and see, we're working about 400 right now. And we have great advocate groups that are helping make this happen. And we're looking at the records to ensure it and see, since a lot of legislation has changed over the past 4 or 5 years, many of these fines and fees are waiverable now. And so my folks will take it, we'll document the entire financial sheet, and we'll send it to the court and say, we highlighted all the offenses that are waiverable. And then the court will tell us what they want to do. Restitution, what you owe a victim is not, but everything else is. So it's really beneficial on how we're working our full program. And finally, the Blake ruling. A lot of folks don't understand the Blake ruling. It was a ruling made by our state Supreme Court, dealt with possession. A lady was arrested for possession with drugs during another offense. She said she didn't know the drugs were in the pants were borrowed. And it went all the way up to our state Supreme Court, who said, yep, since we were not required to establish the concept of knowingly, you didn't have to prove that the person knowingly had possession of drugs. that there could be doubt. Therefore, any arrest for simple possession of drugs was unconstitutional. And that went all the way back to 1971. And so what I am required to do as the county clerk, along with the court and the prosecutor, is that we are required to vacate and dismiss all simple possession. So we vacated off the legal record and we dismissed the counts. And that's for all simple drug possession. Then we have to do refunding. If a person paid any amount of money into the system because they were ordered to pay, we need to refund them. And we have all those programs in place. And then the last portion is resentencing. These are folks, we call these Blake Plus. It's a possession offense in addition to a more serious felony, you know, assault, murder, rape, something along those lines. There's another major felony that's been committed. So most of those folks are incarceration or are incarcerated right now in one of our correctional facilities. They have to be resentenced because you dismiss the count of possession, which will change their offender score, which will reduce their time in incarceration. And so we're getting those folks all brought back to the court to ensure that they get that opportunity to get that score changed. Anybody close to release are the ones we're seeing right away. So that's what's happening in Spokane right now on the Blake ruling. My numbers right now, I got us back to January 1993 offenses. We have 10,344 simple Blake. We owe 2.4 million back to folks. And we have about 4,036 Blake Plus cases. And we owe about 1.4 million. What have we done to date? On the simple Blake, we've knocked out 2,770 of them. So about 1/5, a little over 1/5. Resentencings are at 178 because we need to get them back before the court. We got a long way to go there, but we've refunded about $162,000 to folks that were owed money back. And we've been doing that using a debit card system, vice checks, which is better for folks. Okay, I see a Q&A, Chris. Do you want me to pick that one up, or do you guys look at that one? Okay. I was summoned for jury duty on December 12th to December 23rd, but I was not needed and now have been excused for the rest of the term. If trials are 3 years behind, why was I not needed? So Bob, on that one, we only can handle so many jurors at one time. And I bring in a pool of about 250 every week. And out of that 250, we find out what Superior Court jury trials are going, what municipal court jury trials are going, and what district court juries trials are going. We form jury pools, and then the judicial assistants come up and they get the jury pool and they take it down. And then that pool goes through Valdaire and everything, and prosecutors and public defenders and defense attorneys and stuff will do their challenges. And then we narrow it down to the jury pool of the 14 that will sit on that jury. So as we're bringing stuff down, what tends to happen is the attorneys tend to settle. So it's part of the strategy of the system. They will settle. So you'll be sitting there in the jury room, you're in a pool, you're getting ready to get brought down, and the attorneys settle the case and go before the judge and say, we have a settlement, we don't need a jury trial. And so that's probably why that happened.
Tim, I have a question before you move on.
Sure.
So you talked about legal financial obligations of the court, and it makes sense that restitution is not waiverable. But can you revisit again the process of how court fees are waived?
Yeah, so what will happen is the court will order a series of fees or fines depending on what the offense was. So for example, it'll say, okay, it'll be $200 for court cost and $50 because you had a public defender. You'll owe $100 because you have to take a DNA. And then you'll owe $500 for the crime victim assessment penalty that goes to the prosecutor. In addition, you smashed the store window at this store owner's place. It cost him $1,000 to fix it. So now you owe him $1,000. And then on top of that, there'll be a 12% interest throughout the year on that $1,000. Well, you had what's called discretionary and non-discretionary fees. And several years ago, you could not waive the crime victim. You could not waive DNA. You could not waive court costs. So that added up to $800 right there. And you can't waive restitution, but you could waive other costs. And you can also waive the interest on the non-restitution or on the discretionary costs. That can be waived. Then further legislation came out basically pretty much eliminating those costs and asking the court to waive all of that with the exception of the crime victim assessment penalty, the one-time DNA, not multiple times like they used to do, and restitution. So a person will come and say, hey, I had an offense 4 years ago. I've been paying, but I'd like to get this waived. And we'll look at this and say, yep, these 4 or 5 costs that you're required to pay are now waivable. And we'll highlight them, and then we'll send the person up with the advocate to the court during an LFO session. And the court will look at that and go, yep, these by new RCW are waivable, and they'll waive them. And then they'll come back down to me and we'll clean the record up and say, instead of owing $4,600, you now owe just $600.
Okay, great. I would think that there might be some people out there with the inability to pay those, a certain portion anyway, and they have warrants for not paying them.
Yeah, so a person that, yeah, that's a great question. So there's also an RCW that talks about indigency. If a person comes in and they're indigent and they prove to the court that they're indigent, then the court will not charge and we will not collect. I've always told the court, if you rule as indigent, I will not collect. And so we don't do that. But they have to come in and demonstrate that financial situation. And there's a questionnaire and some paperwork that we'll hand them and say, please fill this out. So for example, if you're on SSI, if you're on TANF, if you're on disability, all those are automatic flags that the person is injured and that they don't get charged. And then we will send that financial disclosure up to the court. So they have that also in the ruling.
I have a couple other questions here.
Okay.
One says, LFO law changes in the last 3 or 4 years. Can you please share more information?
Yeah, wow, that's I have to pull out some of my notes here. So the changes in those laws basically did a couple things. It prioritized how payments would be made. That you will pay restitution first, and then you'll pay the crime victim assessment second, and then DNA third, and then you'll pay court costs fourth, and then interest on restitution fifth, and then interest on the non-restitutions sixth. And it spelled it out saying this is what you will do. And this is, I think that was, I want to say it was House Bill 1783. So it prioritizes how payments were made. And then additional legislation came out that said, hey, these mandatory costs are no longer mandatory. They are now discretionary and the court can waive these costs. And in addition, they said, that you can waive interest now on these discretionary costs, and that you could, the clerk's fee for service got eliminated. We used to charge $100 to run the program for a person. You could charge $100 every year for every case. We didn't do that in Spokane. We charged it one time to run their program for them. Then we were constantly talking to them. If they made good faith payments, we never charged them again. But all that has been changed in legislation. And so now what we're trying to do is make sure people are aware. We have great advocate groups that are out there talking to their clients to help these folks become aware. And we're trying to get them back in to see me so we can go through their LFO records and fix them and clean them up and get them before the court and get the rulings done. Oh, and that's the next question is being asked. What education is being provided to incarcerated people? That's a good question. I am not sure what education is being passed to folks that are actually in an incarceration, but I do know that the advocate groups are very active in talking to their clients and let them know what's going on. And as I understand correctly, as soon as a person is released from incarceration, one of their first stops is to see me. And when they do, and we'll immediately look at their LFO record and say, okay, this is all changed while you were incarcerated. All this is gone, and you're not required to pay all this. And so we'll get that before the court too. I hope that answers the question, but if not, please come see me, and I'll be happy to sit down with you and bring one of my LFO people over, and we'll talk about what we're doing with the LFO program, because it's important. The thing, it used to be an old situation where we had like debtor's prison, where folks were being incarcerated for not paying. Well, that doesn't do anybody any good. You put a person in jail and they have a job, they might lose their job, they might lose their family. You've only compounded the problem by doing that.
Okay, maybe we should move on to veterans.
Yeah, so we're sitting right at 40 minutes. So that one went, and one more slide. I know some folks might have some
Okay.
questions, so I just want to throw one more slide up, Chris.
Wait, quit doing it again. I'm gonna have to go back and,
Oh, no, so or the next slide that will come up will have my points of contact for you to get a hold of me. So,
Okay.
and if not, you can always get a hold of Chris and he'll track me
Oh.
down. And then Chris, once you get that slide up, wait a moment or two, and then we'll slide into the Veterans Court slide.
okay,
Hey, Tim, while we have just a minute, there was one more question in the chat box about
Ah,
how access to pretrial services is impacted by the prosecutor's office. Is that something you can speak to?
Not really. I got to think for a second. Normally, pretrial services will get the information that comes in in the legal record, and then they'll do the work that they need to do. They're not necessarily impacted by the prosecutor's office, but I would have to, I can't honestly say that does the prosecutor get a hold, the prosecutor's office get a hold of pretrial services and say, no, we don't want to divert this person, we don't want this person to go to a diversion program. I don't know that for an answer. I don't. Okay,
great.
here's the points of contact. So folks that were asking questions, if you're not getting the answer you need, please get a hold of me and then come down and visit me and we'll get you an answer because you're owed an answer. All right, Chris, let's go to the Veterans Court. And then again, when we get done with all this, we'll have time to have questions and answers. So our Veterans Court, this is really a good thing here. I got my lovely wife next to me. She's going to be with me as we're going to talk through the Veterans Court stuff. But our program is extremely successful in Spokane. I mean, we're highly successful. We'll talk a little bit about it. Veterans Court are part of a therapeutic court system. Now that's in RCW, that's in statute, that's in 2.30.010. It spells out the statutory authority and criteria of veterans courts and therapeutic courts, more importantly, therapeutic courts. A veteran court is a therapeutic court. So is mental health, so is DUI, so is drug court, so is community court. Those are all therapeutic courts. And the concept is to provide an alternative process, vice going through the alpha court system, because the alpha court system is black and white. And you either get a good ruling or you don't get a good ruling from the judge, depending on what's going on. But in the veterans court, it is more of a restorative justice concept, where standard courts or alpha courts are retributive justice, along the lines of, retribution. You committed an offense, now you have to pay the penalty. And that doesn't always help people. So restorative justice is the better way to go with these court. A treatment court is a more specialized version of veterans court. So our veterans court is a treatment court. So a treatment court enables a court to cut orders to direct a person to treatment, to alcohol or drug addiction, to go to the VA and get a physical and get a medical evaluation, to do urinalysis checks. So it has a little bit more teeth to it. And it also has the treatment concept that we can get folks in before health professionals to see what's going on. We can also direct people to go to counseling classes, and that provides for long-term success. So our veterans, we call them mentees. We don't call them defendants. We just call them mentees. It's a mentoring program. Our court is designed to handle gross misdemeanors and misdemeanors only. So district municipal court, that's where we have our veterans court. We don't have one at Superior Court because that's a felony level. That's a different ballgame. So it can be more effective right now at the lower level when a person's just getting involved in the legal system. And that's what we're trying to accomplish. And our treatment court in Spokane, we handle defendants or mentees from Stevens County and from Spokane Municipal Court, from Pend Oreille County, from Airway Heights Municipal Court, Medical Lake Municipal Court, Cheney, and Ferry County. So we cover a lot of area. Folks come down to go through our program. Veterans Court is not an easy way out for the veteran mentee. The requirements of this program are tougher than they are in an alpha court, but they provide greater success and a greater success rate for the participants. And there are over 237 veteran courts nationwide. So a little bit of history about our Spokane Veterans Court. It was established in September 2010, and the goal was to provide a treatment court for our veterans who got involved with the criminal justice system. The idea is for them to regain their dignity, their pride, and their self-worth for themselves, their family, and for our community. We based it off of the Buffalo Veterans Court, New York, Buffalo, New York, one of the very first courts in the nation. Our court has statutory authority because it has revised codes of Washington. It can impose fines and fees and assessment. It can assign counseling classes. It can assign medical classes. It can assign physicals. And again, it's very successful. To date, we have graduated over 400 mentees. Our recidivism rate is an astounding 5.8. So a regular criminal court, people, and the recidivism rate is 70%, 72%, 70% nationwide. Nationwide veterans courts are 54%. Your Spokane County Veterans Court is 5.8%. We are highly successful. One of the most successful indicators is we have had 52 mentees publicly stand up in a public forum addressing an audience and said they would have committed suicide if not for this program. And that to me is like the strongest point. Our motto is no veteran stands alone. When they're in court, they always stand with a mentor next to them. They don't stand alone when they're in front of the court. They have their attorney, but they also have a mentor. So that's a little bit of history about our Veterans Court and kind of where we are and what we've done. Next slide, Chris. So the Veterans Enhanced Treatment Court is broken down into 4 components: the court, probation, the forum, and the mentor. So I'm going to discuss the courts and probation. I get the statutory side. And then Tracy's going to talk about the forum and the mentors, which is the therapeutic and the treatment side. All right, Chris, next slide. So probation and the court, these are statutory, okay? They are the teeth of the system. This is where the law is at, and this is where we get to enforce the rules. The players on this side are the judge, the court clerk, the prosecuting attorney, the public defender, and court probation. Ideally, we try to get most of these folks to be veterans, so it really helps our program out. The process works like this. A veteran will come into the criminal justice system after being charged with a crime. They're going through the jail booking process, and they are asked, have you ever served in the military? We don't ask, are you a veteran? Because that's a trigger for people. We have found this out. So we ask, have you ever served in the military? If they say yes, we get their information to pretrial services, who then gets information to a probation officer in the courts, and we determine the defendant's eligibility to go into the veteran court. To be eligible to be in the court, you got to have an honorable or general under honorable conditions discharge. You have to have been diagnosed with military sexual trauma or traumatic brain injury or PTSD, or be a combat veteran. Our goal is to expand that to all veterans, which we're going to do here shortly. But that's the current criteria. They are assigned an attorney, and then they're advised that they are eligible to be in the court. So if they're eligible to be in the court, they're advised of their options and their rights, and then they will stipulate to the charges. And that means knowingly and voluntarily pleading guilty to the charges. They have the right by jury or by a trial, but they waive those rights to come into the therapeutic courts. And they agree to accept the terms of the court that the judge will rule on fines, fees, probation, timelines, medical evaluations, the whole works. And then they appear in court with their public defender, another military veteran, and a mentor. And the judge goes over all this stuff again for the record. Judgments will vary a little bit, depending on how violent the crime is or what the history of the criminal action or, some other circumstances. But basically, on a standard day, they'll be looking at a $5,000 fine with a fair amount of that suspended. They'll have to pay for court probation costs, and a lot of that gets suspended at the end. They'll pay for legal financial obligations if they cause damage to a victim. They have to do that. The program is 24 months long, 2 years. And then any jail time they have, the court can put them back into jail. They're not following the regulations, but normally we get them out of jail and we get them into this, into the therapeutic program. They have to do a crime victim panel. And this is where they sit with victims of crimes and the victims tell them how they felt. When it's parents, that involved a DUI and they lost a child, it can get pretty extremely emotional. And a lot of the defendants aren't ready for that when the parents come in. They're required to do medical evaluations, drug and alcohol counseling recommendations. They would do what's called MRT, Morale Recreational Therapy Program, 1 class a week with a test for 23 weeks if they are involved in an assault case. So again, you can see how effective and how powerful these programs are. Then they have anger management classes, and then they have requirements. You're on 2-year probation. You have to attend the first 6 forums, and Tracy will talk about the forums. After that, when you complete the next 6 forums, you're done. They will close your probation out. So most of these young men and women go, oh my God, if I do 1 year, my 2-year probation is 1 year probation. And if I meet all my requirements, I'm done. It's a huge incentive to be actively participating in the program. And they will do that. They can't consume alcohol and drugs, obviously, when they're on probation. And when they graduate, they actually will write a letter on what they learned, and they read that letter in public, which is, for a lot of folks, pretty difficult to do, but they will do that. And that's basically the statutory and the probation side of the house. They report to their probation officer weekly. They report to their mentor, assigned mentor weekly. And at any time they fail to do what the court has ordered, and we're not able to work with them to get them back on track, they go back before the court, and then the court can do different options. Take them out of the program, put them back in jail. So they realize that they're in a good therapeutic treatment environment. So having said all that, I'm gonna turn this over to my wife, Tracy, and she's gonna discuss the treatment or the therapeutic side of the house.
Do you have it here?
Right there.
Can you sit?
You go all the way. You wanna see you, they don't wanna see me.
Hi, I'm Tracy Fitzgerald. I'm a board certified recreational therapist, and just got back from school. I actually teach at Riverside High School as my professional job with the disabled kids there. And so I'm the programs director for the Spokane Veterans Forum. And I don't know, did you go over the mission? Do I need
No,
to?
you can do all that.
Okay. So the mission of the Spokane Veterans Forum is we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And it is designed, as on our website, is designed to recruit, train, and provide one-on-one mentors to every participating veteran. Additionally, the organization provides educational and therapeutic enhancing services to the veterans through the Veterans Treatment Court. I call it the educational component of the Veterans Treatment Court. So we are the educational side that is attached to the Veterans Treatment Court. Our 501c3 has a board of directors and an operational staff that handles all the operational requirements. So the board of directors, which Tim is now sitting on the board of directors, he's the former operations president and has stepped away from that and moved up to the board of directors. Our operations staff has a president, a vice president, a treasurer, a community service outreach engagement, a programs director, which does the programs. We have the forum the 3rd Thursday of every month that our mentees are required to attend for their 12-month, well, excuse me, their 24-month probation. Now they can complete all of that in 12 months. If they attend 12 forums, they get credit for 24. It's a go to one, get one as a bonus. And so they can complete their probationary period. As Tim said, the veterans plead guilty in order to have these services, and they take a plea of guilty so that they can come and be part of the Veterans Treatment Court, complete their program, and in that process can have some of their fines and fees waived. As a programs director, what I try to bring to that is life skills classes. I like to try and bring different ideas for therapeutic type of classes. What can they do as a recreational therapist? What can you do to make yourself learn from this situation and go further. What is your plan when you get done with the Veterans Forum and the 24 months probation coming to the forums? We have a lot of our there are 4 phases of the Veterans Treatment Court. They start, phase 1 is just right out of incarceration. Well, I shouldn't say that, because it's a misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor. Most of the veteran defendants don't go to jail, but they still have to appear in the court. They're arraigned, and then, like I said, they take a plea of guilty in the court and come to us in the next part of that. So our Veterans Forum is an all volunteer organization, and it's no cost to the veterans. One of our key things that we do is we have a hot meal that 3rd Thursday of every month. And the reason we do that is because we find that some of our veterans that are facing the challenges and in court are really lacking in resources. Some of that Maslow's hierarchy. Do they have a roof over their heads? I was a mentor for one of our female Native American veterans who, at the time she came in, did not have a home. And part of her problem was they're very proud because they are veterans. Most of them are very proud. And this specific mentee was so proud she didn't want to admit that she was living in her car. And we were able to get her the resources. And after graduation, not only has she developed into this amazing person that she always was, she's gotten that self-reassurance back. She's now an elder with the Spokane tribe, and she helps us now with our fundraiser, which is our 6th year. Army Navy Tailgate is our fundraiser, because we are a nonprofit organization. And so she helped us to develop that, and she continues to flourish. Many of our veterans also don't realize the resources that they have. And so we have community partners that come in at the forum and meet with our veterans that evening. It's usually 5 o'clock to about 8:30. We have wonderful professors from Eastern Washington University, Gonzaga University, and Whitworth that come in and speak to our mentees and our mentors at the forum. Professor Alan Basham is a retired professor at Eastern Washington University. He comes quite often to help with the Veterans Forum. And during COVID, we were really kept from meeting with a lot of our veterans, and it was kind of a hard time for them because that's their time that they bond. We meet at the Army Readiness Center, so they are a veteran there. They have that camaraderie. And so Professor Alan Basham, we call him Doc Basham, he was a medic in Vietnam, did a blog, and we worked together to collaborate and create Doc's Corner. And the veterans could then watch his videos, read his blogs, and then write about it for the court so that we would keep them engaged in their moving forward through their 4 phases and into the Veterans Treatment Court. That's a lot in this little bit of time. Are there any questions regarding the forum or the Veterans Treatment Court that Tim and I could answer?
Could you repeat what the 4 stages are?
Sure. So we have phase 1 through phase 4. And phase 1 is basically right after arraignment, where we find out that the justice involved person is a veteran. And so they are entered into the Veterans Treatment Court, and their first phase is coming in, learning about the program, meeting with a mentor. A mentor is a person that a veteran that we match with one of the justice involved veterans. It's very similar to if you talked about Alcoholics Anonymous, where you have a sponsor. It's the same kind of concept, but using it with the veterans, supporting veterans. Now, veterans, if you're a male, you have a male mentor. If you are a female, you have a female mentor. So it's the same sex, biological sex, to support that justice involved veteran through the program, which again is a 2-year by date to date, but they can complete it in 12 months. So that's phase one. Phase two is continuing through their program, that they're following all of what is expected by the court. Phase one and two, they usually appear at the court. Is it 2 times a month, Tim?
2 times a month.
Yeah,
it could
2
be- it
times
could
a
be
month.
waived.
And by the time they get through their last phase two to phase three, some of their court times, which are 2 times a month, can be waived because they're in compliance. By 3 and 4, stages 3 and 4, as the program's director and as a rec therapist, my job is to try and get them to figure out what their plan is going to be when they leave us in phase 4, which would be graduation. Phase 4 is very important. They write a letter at for their graduation, present it to the court, and then that following evening at the forum. It's very thought-provoking, and as Tim said, that some of our veterans, they have been very honest about saying that we kept them from committing suicide. They were that desperate, and many of them come back and give back to us in ways through their service, through jobs that they have gotten. And so it's a really neat phase. Phase 3 and 4 are then the final phases. Once they meet that phase 4, it's usually they're getting pretty close to the end.
It's like high school.
Yeah,
courses.
it's like high school, or if in the military, if you were in a military academy or whatever, it's that 4th year. So it's like college. It's like that 4th year graduating.
I have
Or
a
high
couple questions.
Let's see.
So
Yeah.
This first one is for you, and then another one for Tim, and then there's one in the chat box as well. So
Okay.
The Veterans Forum, you mentioned that's a nonprofit.
The Veterans Forum is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, yes, and that is
Okay.
because it's the educational component. They can be either grant funded or privately, or we can receive donations. Because the Veterans Court is run through the government side of the house through the county, they can, it's hard to receive grants or funds through that way. So that's why I believe they set it up
Yeah.
that way.
The
that
court
purpose.
and probation are statutory in
Mhm.
nature. So
Yeah.
the treatment side of the house is the nonprofit. It's because it's designed to help a person, and we bring in service groups, and so we can't violate the rules of the court or anything like that.
How's your funding right now?
Oh.
Well, we had a really good Army Navy. I mean, we can always use, we're a very small organization, but small with a lot of great donors. Garco Construction just came to our event, and we have
Gold Seal
Gold Seal
Plumbing.
Plumbing is another one of, so a lot of veterans organizations. ABC came and spoke at one of our events. So it is good. We are very good about keeping a small operational budget. And keeping within that parameter, and then having what we call a rainy day fund, which is really set aside for like a capital projects that, we are fortunate that we use the Army Readiness Center. We are allowed to be there because we are veteran organization, and we also, the former president here worked with that organization, so that we can actually have our meetings there, and that cuts down on the cost.
Well,
for the
it's
evening.
good for the state. It's a state building, and the state is using the building to support local community and county functions. So it has benefits.
Mhm.
Okay, and then one from the chat box, Bob asks, are former members of the Washington National Guard eligible for the Veterans Court?
Yes. Yes. In fact, we've had members in the court that are active with the Guard.
Okay, and then I just have one question. This is for both of you. You mentioned that your recidivism rate is 5.8% versus a national average of over 50%, and a significantly higher recidivism rate in other courts. What do you attribute that excess to in Spokane?
Oh, you want it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, and I'll let Tim also. I believe it's first of all because they are veterans, and you have a veteran that is. There's something about a veteran that they've been through boot camp, and then you give them the support they need to connect them with the veterans' resources, and they have that feeling of, I can do this, I can make this happen. And I think it's also our program.
Yeah,
So-
the only thing I would say is that it's the focused, dedicated effort to the individual. And they had the camaraderie as a group, but they realize they're going through classes. So it's the wraparound services that we've been talking about forever. You get the argument, okay, they're gonna build a new jail. Oh my God, everybody goes, but what you need is the re-entry, when the person leaves the confinement, what are we doing to help them re-enter society? Where are the wraparound services? That's the key to success. That's what makes the difference.
Right, that's wonderful. It begs the question of what more could we be doing in other courts to support people?
Well, they do that with DUI. DUI court does that. Mental health court does that. Community court in the city, Judge Mary Logan in her community court, because she has service providers there when folks come into the court. Now they're going to get a ruling, but then they have providers there, housing, jobs, banking, child support. I mean, all the things that are really important for somebody that's trying to get back on their feet.
And Mary Logan does dual hats, where she's also community
Yeah.
court. She is also the Veterans Treatment Court for the municipal court.
Yeah.
Judge Patrick Johnson is for district. Did you?
Yeah, I haven't
say
mentioned that. no.
And Patrick Johnson is the the third actually Veterans Treatment Court. Judge Vance Peterson was the initial judge that created the Veterans Treatment Court, along with Fred Arno, Commissioner Arno, and a whole plethora of folks on the outside that help with the Veterans Forum as
So
well.
Chris, if you go to the next slide, I think this will kind of where we are right now in this discussion.
I'm
This will be
sorry,
the last slide.
I'm gonna have to go back out again. I can't.
No problem. That's okay.
We'll
Seem to
let
get there.
you do this last slide, and then we've got a couple more questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I should get down and see the chat box.
Slide down.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay. Here.
Wait,
can
Yeah, I was gonna exit out of that and just, okay.
Okay, so when applied correctly and resources properly,
Yeah.
therapeutic court works. It does. The Veterans Enhanced Treatment Court is nationally renowned, as we know. It is a Spokane good news story. So that's
Yeah,
primarily.
the court's pretty effective. So let me just, I'm gonna look down at, we had some,
Thank you,
oh,
court, for
Can I
all
ask
you-
a quick question before you get
Sure.
to that, Tim?
yeah,
So, for both of you. Now, you mentioned that you're bringing in people from Ferry County and from other locations
yes.
around the state. How did that get started?
So what we did was we've actually gone out and set up Veterans Court.
Benton.
We did the Tri-Cities area. We set up a very effective Veterans Court down there. We've done a couple on the west side of the state. We helped set one up in Stevens County. Now they have their own Veterans Court, but on occasion, when they have defendants that live down in this area here to attend the forum, they ask, may our mentees attend your forum?
Okay.
So so we're the only forum in this area. And so all the folks come down and attend our forum,
So we're the educational
the
component
treatment side.
to the treatment, the treatment side to that court. And because that's in Spokane, we even had some folks that came over from the Kootenai County area in Idaho.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's right. I forgot, like,
yeah.
Kootenai County has one or two of
So
their.
it's by,
Yeah.
it's by, state, yeah.
Okay, so I got one that says, I often hear that the USA have considerably more people jailed in prison in most counties. Do you think the Veterans Court style of helping lawbreakers become law-abiding citizens offer a possible solution? Yes, absolutely, Mark. That's exactly the answer. When folks are at this low level of offenses, this is where we need to get them and help get them back on track. I say back on track to help them get the services that they need to get their, when someone can't get a home or they don't have a job, it's hard to do what the court's telling you to do. They don't have transportation. It's hard, so we set up, we have gas tickets, cards that we give the mentees to come and get to where we're at. So these are the things that we look at, that we try to make so that they can accomplish their goals. That's why the mentor is so important, because they've got to talk to their mentor every week.
And then going forward in that, what is your plan? Is we try to encourage them and give them options. ABC came in September and said, are there any of you that are needing jobs right now? Is when we can trust the Veterans Court, we can vet you and know where you're, even if you have somewhat of a record. The important thing is that you know that we would hire you and train you. And so that gives people, and out of that night, there were 4 that said they'd like to get a job. So it gives them, positive incentives that they can get trained. And as a veteran, they did work. They got through boot camp. They got through whatever, whether they're an enlisted or an officer, because we have both that are coming through the Veterans Court, and they get it. And it's that feeling of satisfaction that they can do it again.
What's great about that was when ABC came, he goes, hey, by the way, this is the salary a front bucket loader will make. And this guy jumped up and goes, hey, I drove a front bucket loader in the Navy SEALs, So this worked out really well for him. He's got a job now,
Cool. Are you able to serve all of the people that you could, if there's so many veterans, and is the program big enough to handle
Yes.
all the possible people that it could serve?
The problem, and let me just say that the problem right now that we're finding with the Veterans Court is a lot of the folks that are coming into court are either being diverted, and we're not sure what that is. If that has to do with attorneys wanting to settle it in a different way, we can handle absolutely, that is not an issue. We would like more veterans to have that option. And I'm not sure and Tim can talk about it from the perspective of what is going on with the court system, if why that is.
Well, no, I think the big thing for us is we need to broaden the eligibility. All veterans should be eligible for the court, and we have to work on that. Discussion about going to the felony level, that's a little tricky because of the type of person you're dealing with. It's a little bit different. You don't
from
need
the forum side.
you don't need a veteran that has their own issues that they're dealing with mentoring a convicted felon that did a really violent crime. You need professional counselors that can deal with that kind of person. So that's where I think we're good where we're at. I wouldn't expand that direction, or I would limit the type of felony cases we take.
And for me as a recreational therapist, I would agree with Tim in the sense that if you're going to have those with felons, then you need to have those that are social workers or professionals that work with the higher level of criminal activity. For us at the misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor, volunteer veterans that are vetted, and all of our mentors are vetted and background checked. So that we can say that, but you're right. That's exactly where we need to be. Oh, there's Brian. Hello, Mr. Newberry.
Right here.
If veterans need SUD treatment or counseling, who pays for it? Do they have support? And traumatic brain injury. So I worked at the therapy or the St. Luke's. I did my internship at St. Luke's Traumatic Brain Injury Unit, and TBI and counseling, that all goes through the VA. With our court, we give them that meal and then we do the supportive classes, but through their veterans treatment, through the court itself, they handle all of that. Who pays? Well, that's where we give the resources. Does the justice involved vet have insurance? Are they on SSI? Do they have VA benefits? And that is something that when they come in on that phase 1, we can look and see and connect them with the Veterans Center if they are not wanting to go to the VA hospital. But we do connect them to see, do they have veterans privileges? And then if not, do they have private insurance? We cannot provide obviously any funding right now for counseling, but however, as the program grows, do we have grant funding for that? That may happen, but not at this time. So I hope I answered that. And do you have support for people with TBI and the counseling? We can, again, help them, get them resources with the VA, which then could point them in the directions of the traumatic brain injury counseling areas. Spokane EMDR came and spoke 2 months ago, and they gave their cards that, you know, they are one of those companies that takes TRICARE, and I believe they do work with traumatic brain injury.
And then our last question is, thank you to
Vets
Vets at Court for all they do. What is your biggest worry or long-term challenge?
Long-term sustainability.
Volunteers, keeping
Yes.
the volunteers, keeping mentors in the program. Mentors are the key to the program. They are what makes it work. And the volunteers to help run the program. Like any major nonprofit, you got to have volunteers to make things work. And so we just got to keep the interest in the volunteers, because our group, we've had a pretty steady group of volunteers for quite a while, and some of them are aging out now. And moving on. And so we're working on trying to get some of the younger volunteers. We've asked former mentees to come back and be mentors because they have a great connection.
And then we have a great staff that it's an all volunteer staff. And I know Colonel Newberry, who is listening in on this, has one of his folks at the Girl Scouts that is one of our staff members. So we have staff members that range from veteran spouses like myself, to veterans that retired in the fire department. And so again, it's an all hands on deck organization.
A quick shout out to Brian Newberry. He's got his Rotary that comes and serves a meal
Yes.
once a year. A
Yes.
free meal to the veterans.
And we
Forum.
do have, you know, if you have an organization that you want to come and provide a meal or sponsor a meal, that is always, we appreciate that so much. And yes, Colonel Newberry is very good about making sure, and Lutheran Community Services is another organization that comes in. We are going to be having in January
Redeemer too.
oh yeah, I think, oh, excuse me,
Redeemer.
Lutheran
Yeah.
Redeemer. Yeah. Lutheran Redeemer.
Redeemer Church,
Yes,
yeah.
Redeemer Church. We are going to be having in January it's kind of like a health and wellness fair that is going to be put on for our veteran mentees by different organizations, and it's being run by our therapeutic court assistant, Sandra Yan. So it'll be a wonderful event. Anybody that would like to come from PEG and be a guest, please contact Tim or myself, and we will bring you in to come and actually see what we do at Spokane Veterans Forum. We do have a guest list, and there's some rules and regulations being at the Army Readiness Center, but you are welcome to come in and see what we do.
Chris, I think I've answered all the questions in the chat box.
There's one more.
One more, okay.
Did you just X out of us?
I can read it too if you like. It's, can you clarify what EMD stands for that gives TBI services?
Oh, EMDR, Spokane EMDR. EMDR is it's a modality that's, there's a young psychologist that works with that. It is a modality in the therapy. It's a therapy that they use different modalities. It's like a light and hand sensor. And so it can be very intensive, but the counselors that run Spokane EMDR, and I encourage you to Google EMDR. It works with the brain and the light and sensory stimulation. And it helps those recovering from post-traumatic stress and some with TBI, but it is something that is a different therapy in the psychological treatments, if that helps.
Very
Spokane EMDR. Yep.
So the last comment from the chat box was from Aruna, who just asked that question, and she says, thank you for an informative presentation. And I would echo that. And do you folks have any last comments before we turn it over to Chris?
Only if you'd like to learn more about the Veterans Forum, you can go to www.SpokaneVeterans with an S forum forum.org. Spokane Veterans Forum, all one word, lowercase.org. And we can thank Crystal Ortega from Girl Scouts, who did a great job in revamping our website.
Excellent.
Yep. Well,
Yeah,
great.
we
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we appreciate the information you presented, two very interesting topics, and we appreciate your willingness to spend an evening with us. And again, this will be recorded. It'll be on our website, so people can view it in the future. So again, thank the audience too for being here, and wish everyone a good evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Happy
much.
holidays.
All right, thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.